All right, in another couple of seconds, we will be live on YouTube. One more second. I'm sorry, we're having a little bit of difficulty tonight. Now we're there. We are now live on YouTube. Kyle, you may begin whenever you like.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. Welcome, everybody, to the February 17th, 2021 meeting of the CB6 Executive Committee. My name is Kyle Athiad, and I'm the chair of CB6. This meeting is being called to order at 6:35 p.m. Tonight, we are joined by District Manager Jesus Perez. To any members of the public, you can raise any questions or comments that you have through the Q&A feature of Zoom. If there is time following the committee's discussion, we will field questions from the public. Tonight's minutes will be taken by CB6 Assistant Secretary Matt Bondi. We will now take attendance by roll call, so please answer present when your name is called.
All right, folks, just give me 1 second to pull this up. Kyle Athiad.
Present.
Elby Barroso.
Present.
Matt Bondi.
Present.
Claire Brennan.
Present.
Beatrice Disman.
Present.
Rick Eggers.
This is Reshma Patel, substituting for Rick Eggers.
All right, thank you. Adam Hartke.
Present.
Molly Hollister cannot join us tonight. John Keller.
Present.
Kavitha Matthew.
Here.
Kevin O'Keefe.
Present.
Matt Roberts.
Present.
Gene Santoro.
Here.
Seema Shah.
Present.
Sandro Sherrod.
Present.
Mark Thompson. Mark Thompson.
Mark is excused.
Okay.
Yeah.
Corinne Vanderdonk.
This is Rich Mintz. I'm here for Corinne.
Okay. And we've got Brian Van Nieuwenhoven.
Present.
All right, we have quorum.
All right. Thank you, Jesus. So the agenda for tonight's meeting will appear on the screen before you. If there is no objection, we will adopt the agenda as stated. Members of the Executive Committee, if you object to adopting the agenda, please raise your hand through Zoom. All right, seeing no objections, the agenda for tonight's meeting is adopted.
I didn't actually see the agenda on the screen.
Sorry, folks. My computer has decided to not like me tonight. Give me 1 second. Are you guys able to see it now?
It's still dark for me.
It still says it's starting.
All right, give me 1 more second.
No worries.
I apologize again. It is in the process of crashing. Let me try this one more time. How about this?
Hey. There we go.
Again, my
Awesome.
apologies.
Thank you, Jesus. So everybody, just please take a look. If there are any objections, please raise your hand through Zoom. Okay, not seeing any. So seeing no objections, the agenda for tonight's meeting is adopted. The minutes from the January 20th meeting were distributed to executive committee members ahead of time by the board office. If there is no objection, we will adopt these minutes. So committee members, if you object to adopting the minutes, please raise your hand through Zoom. Okay. Seeing no objections, the minutes from the January 20th meeting are adopted. So in order to conduct an efficient meeting tonight, let's observe a few ground rules. First, no one may speak until granted the floor. 2, committee members, if you have a question about committee business or wish to make a motion, please raise your hand through Zoom. If you click the participants icon, the participants panel should appear and you should find the raise hand function there. If you still have technical difficulty, you may click the chat icon and relay your difficulty. As a reminder, the chat function should not be used for committee business or questions about agenda topics. All such remarks should be made on the record by raising your hand through Zoom. Chat should only be used to alert us to any technical difficulties you are having or to state in writing information, such as an email address or a link that was already stated aloud on the record during the meeting. Furthermore, when a committee member is given the floor to speak, I will identify you and you can unmute yourself so that you can speak. And last but not least, we are required by executive order to create a verbatim transcript of the meeting. So please keep questions and comments succinct and germane to the discussion. All right, seeing no questions, I'll begin with my chair's report. So the first thing is I want to congratulate Elvie Barroso, the new chair of Health and Human Services. Last month, she led her first meeting, which was a COVID-19 vaccination town hall, which went very successfully. So I want to give you another shout out for that. Elvie, that was really great. We're still hearing about how much people enjoyed that presentation and how helpful it was. So I want to give you another congratulations on that. Next up, as I mentioned, we did a new full board process at our last full board. We reformed the public elected officials section, which cut down on time. I was looking at the time that we saved on it. So we cut an hour from the January meeting and we cut an hour and a half from the December and November meetings as well. What was really great about this was that it actually allowed us more time to actually focus on committee business. So the business of the board, which is really great. Heard great things from the elected officials as well, who also appreciated the process. So I want to thank everybody on this committee for partnership, as well as our elected officials and the full board as well. So that was really great to see. And of course, as we move on with it, we'll see, how we can improve on it and adjust it and anything of that nature as well. But I thought that was a really great success and was glad that people were in partnership with that. The next thing is I want to remind everyone that the first meeting of the newly created Public Safety Committee meeting is tomorrow evening on the 18th at 6:30 p.m. So please do attend. Matt will speak more about it during his report. But I'm very excited that we've restarted this and that Matt will be leading it. So I'm, looking forward to all of the great work that he'll be leading. Next up, I just want to talk about some logistical business with the agendas. So the first thing is I just want to make sure, and everyone's been doing a pretty good job on this since we started this new process of reports today and with deadlines on agendas. But just a reminder that we do these things in advance so that we can promote it in public record. And that also that we can share it with the public for as long as possible so that they can attend the meetings. One of the things that I would like for us to try as well as we create our agendas is to think of a way that it translates to the public. So for a lot of the agendas that I've been reading and attending, we usually use the name of the presentation, which doesn't necessarily get at the heart of the issue. And if someone from the public was looking at it, they might not necessarily know what is at the heart of the issue. So as we think about agendas and putting things together, thinking about ways that are user-friendly, public-friendly, and actually draws people into the presentation We'll get, further into detail at a later point, but just wanted to keep that in everyone's mind. With that, we're going to do some chair support. So the first thing is Jesus and I are reviewing all of the work plans that you submitted. We're making notes on it. We'll be connecting with each of you to discuss all of the feedback that we have on it and thinking about our planning going forward. So don't worry, it wasn't just a document that you had to make and submit, but we will actually be using this. So Jesus and I are putting together our notes, and we'll start reaching out to you to discuss that in detail. With that chair support, I'm actually canceling executive committee next month in March, and instead we'll be doing an internal training amongst ourselves about resources and logistical resources that are available to you as well. And Jesus will get a little bit into detail about this during his report, but we'll send this by email as well, but we will be focusing our March meeting on that. So if there's any committee business that you would like to discuss or having issues with that you would normally bring up during this meeting, please reach out to Jesus and myself sooner rather than later. But we do want to focus the next meeting on internal work and resources and just logistical things that we can work on. So that's all I have for the chair's report. I don't know if anyone has any questions on any of that. If you do, just raise your hand. Otherwise, we'll move on to the district manager's report from Jesus Perez. All right, see one hand. Rashma?
Yes, I just wanted to, because I, am stepping in for Rick, I just wanted to make sure that you had a plan from budget, because I hadn't been involved in that process. So
I don't think we do, no.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
so I'll reach out to you after, Rashma.
Yeah,
Okay.
we'll work with you specifically. Your committee's in a different situation. So.
Okay, yeah. So I just wanted to make sure that's something that we needed to focus on. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you, Rashma. Kavitha?
Yeah, sorry.
problem.
Quick question, if we had any thoughts on the new format of the full board meeting, should we bring it up now or later?
Yeah, sure, you can bring it up now.
I mean, I think it's great that we save time, but I also feel a little like we're losing out on getting the connection with the electeds I know it's a little too much and too in-depth, but I wonder if there's like a happy medium we could do without just reading their reports and going so quickly through it. I don't know if anyone else had thoughts on it, but that's kind of how I feel.
Sure. Do you have any ideas or feedback on that you might have thought through?
I mean, I think I guess before we were limiting how long people could talk, right? And you still felt like it was going over because everyone was choosing to talk. So I wonder if we just make it more specific as to people who have really relevant updates speaking and limit the number of people who get to speak, but still have that connection, like, just still actually hear from either the electeds
Sure.
or the
Yeah,
staff.
so just to clarify the process on the other end, and then we'll get to all of the hands. So the way we worked it out with the elected officials was exactly what you said, which was we don't want the full board time to be reading through a report, which they've literally done. So they'll bring their and actually go point by point. So what I asked them to do was, if they're submitting that kind of report, to please submit that ahead of time, and which is already for many of them pretty much available, but to conglomerate it into one specific section that people from the public could reach, and one location that members of the board could reach, which is on our website, right? So we created that section on the website. So I asked them that, to make sure that those reports are ahead of time, that everyone on the board had about a week to read through that. And that if they had important information that was not included in that report, whether it be an issue that has popped up, something they believe is of pertinence, or obviously, within a week, some things can happen, or even the day before, to let us know during the section where we call on them, or even before the meeting if they know that they need some time to inform us of that report. So we still have that built in if they would like to make that report. The feedback that we had just gotten from some of the elected officials themselves, which was kind of funny to hear, was that they're like, yeah, this section is long and we do repeat ourselves or we overlap with a lot of the work. So they actually enjoyed the format as well. But if you feel like we are losing that and there's some way for us to continue that connection, because as I mentioned, and even spoke with these elected official reps as well, is that's a huge part of community board, is having that interaction between the elected official, and not just the community board, with the public. So if they're members of the public who have come there for a specific issue or want to raise a concern, that they do have that opportunity. And so what we saw was that a lot of people really enjoyed and valued the time to ask questions of their elected officials or to bring up topics that weren't necessarily being discussed. So that's what I wanted to focus more of the time on. And this is actually building upon previous chair, Mark Thompson, who had actually first started that limit of 3 minutes each. But even with the 3 minutes, we had gone to, was that you, Sandro?
Yeah, I was actually saying we've been doing that forever, but I think I implemented an actual, the timer.
You did the timer.
Yeah. And it's been evolving. It's an ongoing thing. Yeah.
And so we saw that was still going in an hour and a half with our committee business. And so we just wanted to make sure that it was more efficient. But if there are ways that anyone else sees that, we can make it more interactive or, be more time efficient or whatever it might be, definitely open to that. And do you have a follow-up? Is that your hand still up or? Okay. Yeah, so just want to make sure that we're clear on that too. So the elected officials are aware of that process as well. So I worked with both ways. So we worked with elected officials to make sure that they had their process to submit to us. And then obviously I sent that email to the board members as well to ensure that they know what the process is to go forward with that. Brian, I see your hand up.
Yeah, you guys can hear me. Okay, so I want to preface this by saying that I have talked to some members of the community who are not affiliated with the electeds or the board, and they were extremely impressed at the improvement from last month in terms of the flow of the meeting and the fact that we wrapped up the elected portion so quickly. I had sort of the same concern as Kavitha. I'm thinking that the electeds, they knew that they had a time limit. They didn't really adhere to it. It just kind of spun out of control every single month. That's on them, and we had to make a call on that. But I didn't want to entirely lose the connection from the community to the elected. That said, our board meeting is not the right forum for us to have a town hall with the elected, which leads me to suggest that if we want to facilitate or restore that connection with the elected, I think a first step would be to actually organize town halls for the electeds servicing the community district, if we feel that we need to be part of that. I would vastly prefer that the electeds hold their own town halls a little bit more often, but we could also organize that. We have budget for that. That's something that we could put our time into, and sort of just reserving a room after the pandemic or Zoom now, and just having that kind of meeting where we could have 90 minutes with our local electeds. But we would need to do it on a completely different night. Stacking the board meeting after they have a town hall is just not working.
So that's
where we ended up right now is actually a pretty good place. And I don't necessarily feel a need to do that, but I thought I'd bring that up because that was the problem that I always felt with the old system, that it just kind of turned into something that wasn't our board meeting.
I appreciate that, Brian. And actually that comes to a point that Jesus and I were going to discuss during our one-on-one calls with each of you about work plans, which is that a lot of the electeds have reached out about attending more committee-specific meetings on topics, whether to send their reps or then they themselves. So one of the other things that you might have noticed that we implemented, and Jesus, if I'm kind of jumping in your territory here, just let me know, but we created a press release of what we have done the night before. And part of the design of this as well is to encourage partnership with elected officials who can see what's on our radar. So they might have things that are in their purview that they are focusing on that they don't necessarily know that they can partner up with us on. And so we have created this that we worked on. And Brian, thank you for your help in putting this together in an official way.
I was going to say, wow, Kyle, I had no idea this was going on. How amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you for the initiative.
Yeah, thank you. And so we've put this out, and we'll be doing this after every full board meeting to ensure that people of the public, our agencies, elected officials are aware of the work that we are leading to increase partnership and collaboration as well. So if there's anything that you ever want an elected official to show up to, they're very eager to do that in that setting. And as Brian mentioned, and we've already seen from many of the committees, town halls and other type of events are something that we definitely encourage. So as we work with you, definitely, use that as an opportunity to draw elected officials in and to create that interaction as well. All right, I'm going to move on to Rich, who had his hand up next.
I pass. I've been covered.
Perfect. Adam?
Actually, I believe B's hand was up before mine.
Okay, B, go ahead.
So I share part of the concern that was expressed, and I wonder if there can be a compromise. I actually think that the procedure applies very well to staff that shows up, because they are basically reading, their newsletter, and, it's really pro forma. But if you have an elected official that shows up, I think you've certainly given them the ability to update us on something that has happened in the week. But I wonder if you'd also give them the opportunity, Carl, to present one of the most important things that they're dealing with in a limited time frame, so that they can express from whether it be the newsletter or whatever, what was significant to them in the community. I think that keeps electeds coming, and I don't feel the same way towards the staff.
Okay. Yeah, no, definitely. I can emphasize that we did build that into that as well. If they do have something that they want to share that's important, to do that as well. So as you saw, some chose to do that. So Senator Hoylman was talking about some of the legislative success that he had, as well as Councilmember Kayla. So I'll emphasize that again. Obviously, it's a new process, so some people might not have thought of doing that. But for next meeting, I'll definitely emphasize to share that with us. Thank you for that. And then Adam.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. My only input was going to be is that if any of us had sort of pressing questions or something that the electeds, we felt that they should address, or something that's on the top of our heads, it might be a good idea maybe to email the office or something so they can pass it along and they could speak to it at the meeting, right off the bat. So that was just what I was thinking. So
no, that's a great idea, Adam. Yeah, so
Thanks.
I'll build that in as well. Yeah, if any of you or the board have questions that you want to bring up or you want them to address, we can submit that to them ahead of time. And especially if we see several questions on the same topic, as we mentioned, they can use that time to present on that topic. Okay. Any other questions or comments on any of that, or anything else I mentioned during the chair's report? All right, seeing none, we'll now hear from Jesus Perez with the district manager's report.
Hello, everyone. Yes, I'm glad Kyle mentioned the press releases. As you saw, it's something new that the office is doing. You may have seen that it resulted in us getting featured in Patch recently. The board doesn't often get featured in the news media. Not that that's the goal, but in order to attract, new blood to the board, in order to attract the public to come and take an interest in their community board, the profile of the board needs to be raised a little bit. And one way to do that is to accentuate the good work the community board is doing with the press. So other parts of the city have a very vibrant local press scene. Unfortunately, East Midtown does not, but we're doing the best that we can. And yes, as Kyle alluded to, Brian gave us a training in writing press releases and in being more proactive in reaching out to the media. He has a background in this, and Kyle knew this, and chose to arrange a training for the office. It's also interesting for the office. I mean, the office, sometimes we can be it can get very isolating because, for example, if you work at the borough president's office, you're there among 50 people. When you work in a community board office, you're there among 2 or 3, maybe 4 if you're lucky. It was a great opportunity to sort of interact with board members in a different way, and also to learn a new skill. Writing press releases is not something that we typically do, so we're getting better at it. And after every full board, the next day, we will prep the resolutions and get them on the resolution tracker posted on the website. And we will then have a press release ready to send out, so that hopefully we can get some coverage on the resolutions that you guys pass. That will mean, though, that it's important to make sure that these resolutions come to the office on time, early preferably, that they are, proofread, that you're reading through them to make sure there are no, awkward phrasings or incomprehensible phrasing, things like that. In the past, things like that are what delay the resolutions from coming out. And in part, the training that Kyle alluded to for next month, one of the things that will be covered, the agenda is still in formation, and I'd like to share the agenda with you in advance, so in case you guys have any input. But one of the things that will be covered are things like that, more operational housekeeping stuff, because I do think at times, while we have a great opportunity at exec to talk about the work of the community board, oftentimes I feel like what we effectively need is sort of a staff meeting. And oftentimes exec with everybody watching may not necessarily be the best platform for that. So sort of in an internal, non-judgmental space, having all these things, having this opportunity where the committee chairs can talk shop and sort of get some things cleared up, I think would be a good thing. Kyle thinks would be a good thing. We've recently been, the office has been trying to interact with the committee chairs a little bit more, trying to sort out their agenda items and things like that, speakers and stuff. And it's been pretty good. We've had some good success with the few interactions that we've had. So hopefully that can be continued at the training next month. I also want to mention that we have been working with a freelance graphic designer. We recently engaged a freelance graphic designer because while the CB6 office staff is wonderful, and I don't think it's hyperbole to say probably the best in the city of all the 59 community boards, we ourselves do have our limitations, and graphic design is one of them. But we engaged a graphic designer, and we're going to try and use her in the future to try and be more proactive in getting our profile out there on social media, and when the community board has more events, to come up with really interesting flyers and appealing flyers for those events. I'm going to give you a sneak preview of one of the flyers that's coming out, and the topic Kavitha will tell you about, but I want to show you the flyer because I think it's really snazzy. And there you go. It's for a project that the Strategic Community Planning Committee is working on. And we're very happy to have this additional resource. We do have funding for this kind of service. And I think this is a great way for the community board to use its funds to raise its profile and to better engage with the community. But I don't want to go on too long, so that concludes my report unless there are any questions. And I do see a compliment. Thank you, Rich. All right, there don't appear to be any questions, so we may proceed.
All right, thank you, Jesus. Let's get to committee business. And I actually, if possible, could we move something around? Because John just informed me that he has to run to something at 7:30 and he's at the end of the agenda. Would people be amenable to moving him up first?
Yeah.
Are there any objections to that? All right, seeing none, let's start with John.
First of all, thank you very much. I had something come up with one of my kids literally at the last minute that I have to be at by around 7:35. So I appreciate it. I'll return for the favor. I'll be very brief. The recap of our previous meeting, we had basically a discussion of where the committee is going to go. This is a new committee, effectively, and I presented, the space, the public space on education in the city and the Department of Education, and I'll cover the rest of that in the my vision section to get this part in 30 seconds. My the upcoming agenda will be basically a visit by in March. We are going to have a discussion on access to schools in Community District 6, which is a tentative agenda item because for a reason that I'll go into when I discuss the agenda, the committee vision going forward. Requests for partnership, I think the clearest request for partnership will be continuing working with the Homeless and Human Affairs Committee and the Open Spaces and Parks Committee in terms of issues with youth. On the committee vision, I would like to just follow up on what Brian talked about. And we are basically trying to establish what is the unique role of a community board when it comes to education. The space in New York City on education, there are literally dozens of advocacy groups. And not only dozens of advocacy groups, but multiple groups of elected parents on community education councils, CPAC, district presidents' councils. These are all empowered voices. So then the question becomes, what is the unique role that a community board can play in education? And there are two things that we've started to focus on. One is we have a number of schools in our district. And so we are going to ask all people on the committee to own 2 or 3 of those schools. And this will also facilitate our work at budgeting time to get to know the issues at those schools. And, we already have a role model with work that's being done by Neil Barkley at PS 116 in the River School on students in temporary housing. So we're going to focus on schools in our district and allocating people on the committee to schools in our district. Then following up on Brian's comment on town halls, we do want to have a town hall related to admissions, but we want to do it right. You only get one chance to make a first impression. So I'm meeting tomorrow with Marisol Rosales, who's the executive superintendent for all schools in Manhattan. And I'm going to talk to her about what would be the right way to engage senior DOE people in a meeting, which would be attended by electeds, without it becoming the food fight that most of these meetings become across the city these days. And how do we make that a very productive meeting for parents and guardians of kids in our district? And this will probably take place in April, but because we really want to do it right. We want to follow the model of the Health Defined meeting that Health had the last month or recently. So that's basically where we are on our vision. And we just want to be very careful when we hold a town hall on a sensitive issue, that it's properly organized with the right people from the DOE.
All right, thank you, John. Seema, I see your hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Kyle. I'm just curious, John, I know I'm not on the committee, and I don't know if we have any colleges or universities in our district. I'm like trying to remember if Baruch is in our district or if there are any others. But we have colleges and universities obviously all around our district, some very close by. And so I'm curious if there's any kind of take on coming up with the Unified College and University platform as well. I obviously worked as head of innovation for LaGuardia Community College, which is, in Queens, way outside our district. But, we did a lot of work with our community board in LIC. So I'm just curious if, there's been any thought around that.
Actually, I hadn't thought about that. What I have thought about is definitely including the high schools in our district, which are usually overlooked. So, for example, the High School of Art and Design, I definitely want to get involved. And I think Baruch High School is also in our district. But very open to the idea of working with colleges, you know, in the district. It just never crossed my mind.
Yeah, you just might want to ask folks on the committee, you know, you said you were going to assign, you know, folks to serve as liaisons, or at least, you know, have a pulse on what's going on with the schools. I mean, there might be someone who's interested in looking at CUNY, which is, you know, obviously a huge political force in the city as well. And I think it would be a missed opportunity if we didn't look closely at the CUNY opportunity.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I just want to make sure we do, you know, we do, you know, a few basic things right in the beginning and have the right model for engagement. But I'm very, I'd be very open to that. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Seema. And yes, oh, Sandra.
Yeah, no, just real quick, a thought. I mean, I agree with what Seema was just saying. I was just thinking of the differences between, you know, with schools in District 2, for example, we have a very unique position where we can advocate for funding or for programs to be advanced more so than we could potentially in a private public kind of college university situation. So just something to think about. And I guess I wasn't really going anywhere with that. I just wanted to think about it out loud. Sorry about that.
No, and to that point, you know, under the new business portion of our next meeting this week, in fact, I'm going to talk about resolutions on food security in the schools, you know, in support of Public Advocate Williams' bill before the City Council, which is supported by Ben Kalos. We're going to have a resolution on amnesty for budget deficits related to COVID that's been proposed by Controller Springer. Yeah, we're definitely going to take this.
Yeah, and I just want to add, I'm sorry, just to circle back on Sandra's point that the city makes significant
I wasn't arguing
investment.
with you, Seema, sorry.
Oh, no.
I didn't mean it to sound like that.
No, I'm saying that folks might not know, and honestly, I didn't know, but the city makes direct investment in community colleges, that they do not make investments in four-year colleges. So maybe that's why when I was in, you know, at a community college, like I said, we were really tied in with our
excellent point.
Board.
Thanks.
Yeah, no, I'll touch base with you on that. Right now, I'm just happy to be expanding to high schools, you know, from elementary schools and middle schools. We have some very, you know, fine middle schools in our zone that we never really have talked to before. So we want to make sure we get to them as well. Thanks.
Okay.
Okay, and thank you for giving me for the forbearance here. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And we'll continue the conversation, of course.
Yes, I just I have been talking at length with Jesus and Kyle about how we move forward with the committee, and so this is a work in progress.
Mm-hmm. All right, thank you, John. All right, let's move on to transportation. Gene.
Hi. Okay. We passed 2 resos on 3rd Avenue to expand the sidewalks between 26th and 32nd, and in support of Brad Holman's Furious Act to expand the use of school cameras to focus on speeding by cars, which is rampant. And thank you, Rich, again for retweeting the Pash story, which is getting some nice play. Really appreciate that. Now, the upcoming agenda, where, as you see, we're hoping for yet another return of DDC and DOT to tell us about cyclist mitigation in particular, but also pedestrians. People are still walking through the construction site. It's now become even harder and therefore even more dangerous. Luckily, it's winter. We're having more snow. That'll keep the population down. But we're hoping that they come to us with a solution by spring. ADA accessible pedestrian signals, we've got about 50 odd of them in the district, which was actually more than I thought. But we're going to ask for about a 20% increase of them. We're identifying locations that are around hospitals and senior centers and things like that that are missing them. And we'll pass that on to DOT, and Colleen Chattergun has assured me that they will be receptive to that. They're really interested in expanding that program. Summer Streets is the reach, and that's probably going to be 2 months worth of discussion. We're going to have, well, I'll leave that for the partnerships, or I'll segue into the partnerships with this. We're having support on summer streets. I've already discussed this at length with Adam and Kevin. Adam, the map master, will be making us some maps, series of overlays with various streets and a calendar to go along with it, because we're proposing a very big expansion from the 3 Saturdays in August that were the original mode. We're going to need to reach out to CB3 and CB8. I'm going to ask the office to help me with that. We're also, if Brian Lafferty is here, I'm going to be reaching out to the borough president's office to discuss it with them as well. I've already spoken with Colleen Rivera's office and with Keith Powers' office about the possibilities for this. Goals. Well, and obstacles. Let's do obstacles. DDC obstacles to the fixing the detour. The main one is the contractor's fear of liability. And so that's going to be one of the negotiating sticking points going forward. It's an understandable concern, but we're not alone in this. We do have the backing of the Stuyvesant Town management, who made clear in the meetings we've had with them and with DOT and DDC that they do not like the setup the way it's designed as it is either. And so they have a lot of motivation to try to fix this. Hopefully we can come to some sort of terms with that. We will continue finessing the open streets idea that we promulgated with 3rd Avenue with the full support of Carlina Rivera's office, who after all originated the idea of open streets. She apparently likes the variations. It opens it up to more possibilities around the city. And so we'll be looking at that in upcoming meetings. It won't be next month, but it'll be going forward. We'll be looking at Lexington Avenue, the restaurant strip there in the 20s. And I've also in a preliminary way talked with Keith Powers' office about parts of 2nd Avenue. Back to summer streets, talking about obstacles. The obstacles, one of the things we want to try to do is to close down the FDR Drive as part of this for at least some sections. That is going to be a ginormous reach. We're going to need a lot of tailwind and a lot of push with it. So again, I'm going to be reaching out to additional people. Any ideas or input from anybody on this committee or elsewhere is going to be very welcome. One of the fallbacks we have, barring if they decide that we can't push them far enough to get the entire FDR Drive, we can possibly get sections. One of the sections that we have our eyes on, I think most clearly, is the exit ramp that starts at about 35th Street and rises up to 42nd Street. That would be a mini High Line for this area that would be really useful to close. So we have some fallback plans in case that gets to be too long a shot, and rather than lose everything, we'll get something out of it, as well as additional streets within the district and other districts. And that's really about it for now. I think I have a couple other things, but I've taken enough time.
All right, thank you, Gene. Are there any questions, comments for Gene? All right, appreciate the work you're doing, Gene. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next up, let's move on to Environment and Parks. Kevin?
I am here. Thanks, Kyle. At the February 2nd committee meeting, we passed a resolution that then passed the full board. The resolution is for a stretch of East 36th Street between First Avenue and the Tunnel Approach Street to be included in the Department of Transportation's Open Streets program. As far as next steps, Alliance for Kips Bay is being proactive about following up on this. And I did express to that organization that the committee is here and ready to help move the needle as needed. This particular open street request has already gained the support, as many of us know, from Councilmember Powers. Upcoming agenda. Yes, this was recently added. Carlos Suarez, the founder of Rowi's, the restaurant slated to open this year at 20th Street and First Avenue, would like to develop that open space in front of the restaurant on First Avenue into a community garden. And we will be hearing from Mr. Suarez at our next committee meeting. Discussion of open spaces is going to be an ongoing agenda item for committee for, I think, possibly the whole year. Discussion of open spaces unavailable for public use. And we'll get our report from the Department of Parks and Recreation, Chair's report, old new business. As far as requests for partnerships, yes, a request to further discussion on collaboration with the strategic community planning, land use and waterfront and transportation committees on open and green space. The communications that I've had with all three committee chairs have been fabulous, so thank you. And each one of those cases reaching out to me as opposed to vice versa. Committee vision, I think, is next. New goals include better understanding of how community gardens can be more of organic part of the community, pun intended. Obstacles include securing representatives of private open and green spaces to be part of the dialogue with the committee. The vision is for more private support of public environment and park needs, especially when we hear that the hurdles are you don't have enough money to get that done. Case in point, Rowe's Community Garden has already landed the financial support it needs from a company long based in the city, American Express. Now, another private space, of course, brought up before is the Gramercy Park. The Gramercy Park Block Association president has declined to speak about potential extension of the 1 hour per year that the park is typically open to the public. On this note, last week, the committee secured a original copy of the 1831 handwritten and typeset deed of Gramercy Park, and we are reviewing it for possible next steps regarding what's inside, regarding the park trustees and lot owners' city requirements as part of that original deed. We are also hoping to have open discussions with representatives from the United Nations Garden, certain POPs, Kips Bay Tower, and other places where open green space is currently closed to the public, but has been open in the public in the past. I'll also add that I have a lot better appreciation for the importance of compost and look forward to looking at other compost initiatives that have worked in and outside the community. If you haven't seen the documentary Kiss the Ground, I would recommend it. I learned a lot from there and other places. On the planned combined heat and power plant at Stuyvesant Town, we want to see a working group started in the near future, especially since this is a suggestion that came from Stuyvesant Town, Peter Cooper Village Management, with support of the Properties Tennis Association. Just by happenstance, I happened to see the outgoing CEO, Rick Haydick, today. He was literally packing up a car and saying goodbye. And the new general manager was there as well. So I would like that that discussion to be put more on the fast track. I've spoken too much. Hopefully that's a good update.
Thank you, Kevin. Appreciate it. I feel like you're Indiana Jones or something going through these old deeds and whatnot.
It's amazing. Well, hat tip to the head librarian at the New York Historical Society for that find. And to the vice chair of the committee, Jeannie D'Onofrio, who loosened that jar lid.
Right. No, thank you. And to Jeannie as well. Are there any questions for Kevin? All right. Seeing none. Thank you so much. And keep us posted on how it goes forward. All right. Let's move on to strategic community planning. Kavitha.
Thank you, Kyle. And thanks, Kevin. I think the Ark of the Covenant might have been easier to secure than Gramercy Park access, but we'll see how that goes. So recap of the previous meeting, we had a representative from Open New York speak, and he actually focused on community engagement, which was, sort of in some ways rudimentary, but also really helpful to hear again. The most effective means of community engagement got us, I think, back on track for how we want to proceed with some of our tasks that we would like to continue with MSBI and other projects. So with MSBI, we continue to update communications efforts and outreach efforts with that, whether it's communications going out through the office and also like community engagement ideas for future events that we want to hold to get more feedback about what people want to see at the MSBI site and in general in our district. And we also discussed this idea that I think I may have mentioned last time about a visioning session that we would really love to bring together obviously, as a couple of people mentioned, I've been reaching out to various other committee chairs. I'd like to reach out to everyone at some point soon and just see ideas on that and see if we can get something going for the spring. Wells, my vice chair, and I are working to put that together. So for our upcoming agenda, we are having a rep from MSBI speak briefly about ongoing plans. I don't think there's going to be a huge update. So also thinking about the Speaker Johnson's comprehensive plan. I think, Adam, you'll get into that more in your report, but seeing if we can kind of piggyback onto what land use is going to talk about in terms of that potential legislation. I would love to have either a rep from Speaker Johnson's office or there's some opposition to that. I'd like to give a platform to one of those in our meeting potentially. So that's kind of a question mark agenda item right now that hopefully we should be able to figure out in the next day or two. We also will continue to go into community engagement and ideas. We did have some ideas about having meetings as spring comes around outside, like, you know, tables in a park set up basically with the flyers, the lovely flyers. Thank you to Kyle and Jesus in the office, Cody. I've been in touch with Cody today. Didn't know about the graphic designer till recently, but it worked out well for me because we were trying to get these flyers out and now we have somebody who's professional helping to design them. So that will be part of it, trying to figure out when we kind of launch those and coordinate with the office and others to see when and where we can do those, and then ongoing discussion of the visioning session. In terms of partnerships, I mean, I think I've been talking to a lot of people, just outreach on my own. I think ongoing help from the office on all these things that I'm really annoying and pushing about, like, you know, letters to people to get more feedback from various stakeholders for MSBI. I think, you know, just continuing to do that. We're probably to see if we do need to invite somebody, that I may need some help from the office as well. And then committee vision, we're following our general vision, tweaking it as we go. I know we had talked about next month's meeting being more focused on healthcare, and talk to Elvie about that. We have some ideas. I think, Elvie, I'm going to continue to talk to you kind of on the sideline before we can figure out exactly how to proceed with that in a way that strategic planning can be really useful. But that's really it. I don't think there's anything else in terms of committee visions or challenges. We're just going to try to keep expanding our ideas and moving them forward.
Awesome. Thank you, Geetha. Are there any questions from anyone else? I just want to keep encouraging everyone as we think about how we want to use the specific site to continue to partner up with Kavitha and the Strategic Community Planning Committee, because this is really an opportunity, and we should be creative and innovative in our thinking. So thank you for leading that, Kavitha, and let's continue to partner up on that.
Actually, I have a question for Kavitha. Kavitha, you said just now that you were talking with Elvie about potentially a health-centered item at next month's meeting, meaning March or meaning April. So are we adding something to what's already there for your agenda item?
I had initially planned to, but at this point, I think I'm going to table that other than the MSBI item that's already there. If I add anything, it will likely be related to either the comprehensive plan or a couple more agenda items that are more about community engagement around MSBI.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you. All right, let's move on to budget and governmental affairs. Rashma.
Rashma, you're muted.
Sorry, thank you. At our February 8th meeting, we had a discussion of the response that we got from the City Office of Management and Budget to our district needs statement that came at the end of January. And we highlighted 5 items from our list of district needs that we wanted to put in a letter responding to them. You know, saying that these are the items that we think we definitely, you know, want to have a priority right now, especially given this change situation between when we submitted our district needs and then the COVID-19 crisis that's happened. And we'll have a further discussion of this at our next meeting. And then we continued our discussion on state legislation to improve voter services, which we had speakers from our January meeting, and we got updates on what is happening at the state. And we did not issue a resolution, but we will be working on one for March. In our upcoming agenda for the March meeting, as I mentioned, we will work on a voting reform legislation based on what the state moves forward with. And we will go through the items that are in our district needs statement in conjunction with hearing from all the different committees and hoping to get their response to what we got from OMB. In terms of partnership, what we have discussed with you, Kyle, and the office is we'll put the Airtable of the district needs on the website so it is accessible to everybody. And if all the other committee chairs can take a look at it, Brendan has updated it to reflect the response that we got from the city in January. And we want to hear from all the committees as to your comments on that. If you have any new needs, if there are needs that have been funded or should no longer be there, please let us know. And in our committee vision, we had talked about at the end of last year that we wanted to focus more on the governmental affairs side, which we have been doing with the discussion we had in January on voter services. February ended up being about the district needs because we got the response from the city. And that will take up much of the March meeting, but we hope to get back to more governmental affairs issues later. And I think the main obstacle is, we are trying to formalize a process for district needs, which, hasn't been there. It has varied depending on who is the chair of the budget committee. So I had a really great discussion with Jesus and Brendan in the office and to see how we formalize this process. And that is our new goal, to do that so that it doesn't change when committee leadership changes, and that it's accessible easily to everybody. And by putting the Airtable on the website, we're hoping that it will become a more seamless process, and we will be communicating with the other committees much more often, and it would be easier to communicate as a result.
Okay, thanks so much, Reshma. One of the other things that I want to get on your radar as well is what Jesus and I had discussed at last full board meeting, which is about what these full board or what community board meetings look like down the road, and how we want to figure out how we want to do that. So part of that is the public meetings law at the state level.
Yes.
So hopefully that's something that we can get a resolution on, that I would then like to bring to borough board and get some of the other community boards to sign on to as well, because I think it is time to reevaluate that, because we're in a different world when that law was first constructed. So as part of your committee, I'd love to do that as well. And there was actually, this randomly came up at strategic community planning, because the presenter from Open New York was talking about this as well, that this is an important thing about accessibility to community boards. And of course, being virtual has allowed that in a different way. So that's definitely something that can be on your agenda as well. And hopefully he can actually make that presentation again, because I thought it was a pretty great presentation that went through all of it.
And somebody from Open New York had actually come to the Parks meeting also, right? And had similarly said something like that too, that having the virtual meetings has helped, and even in what he was doing in the which was very different, than the discussion you had. I also would just like to thank Kavita did attend our last meeting, and Jean from Transportation had reached out and to start working on the district needs statement update. So I appreciate that.
Perfect.
All right, thank you. And we'll add that to the agenda. We can add it for March, so we can.
All right, I'll add it to the agenda. We also have started to receive responses to the survey about remote meetings. Some of the responses are really interesting. So what we'll do is, as we start to get them, we'll start to compile them into a readable format, and then we'll send them to the committee. But we'll probably leave the survey up for a little while, just to give the maximum number of people the opportunity to answer it. write this in for your agenda, a discussion of online meeting practices post-pandemic. I am not thrilled with that, but we can workshop that language, something like that.
Yeah, like accessibility.
Yeah.
Or something like community board accessibility post-pandemic or something.
All right. Well,
But yeah, you guys can work on that.
Yeah. But we can even say meeting format, or keep it open. Yeah.
All right. We'll workshop that.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. So full board. LV, Health and Human Services.
Good evening, everyone. About the recap of previous meeting, our first Human and Health Service Committee meeting was successful. 2 speakers from the citywide and Manhattan branch on caregiver support services gave us a comprehensive overview of the new program. And Jesus thought that it would be good to post the information in our website. About upcoming agenda, the agenda for our next meeting is on mental health issues related to COVID. And we have 2 speakers coming from NYU. About request for partnership, first, we plan to partner with Homeless Services Committee to discuss the problems on homelessness. Second, I would like to request help from the office to explore speaker for telehealth, as this will be our agenda in April. When it comes to the committee vision, our short-term goal is to inquire at the Department of Health on how we can bring the COVID vaccine to seniors who are homebound. And our long-term goal is the establishment of community health center in our district. And we plan to collaborate with the Strategic Community Planning Committee, as the MSBI site could be a potential location. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, LV. B, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention something to LB because I can't do it because of what I do on the federal level. But certainly with COVID-19, there's been a lot of concerns for policies, what the policies are at a state level, a city level, with the long haulers, with COVID-19 that is durational, that lasts over 12 months. So certainly mental health is one of them. But another aspect of it is the side effects of the disease on other disabilities and areas that it's impacting. So I would help LJ that in future meetings, you could deal with other aspects of COVID-19 and how they're impacting.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, B. Are there any other questions for LV? All right, thank you so much. I will now move on to Rich with Housing and Homelessness.
Thank you. Our recap is brief. We didn't consider any resolutions in the last meeting. We spent the time discussing the status of some of the significant resolutions that we passed in the previous 18 months. There won't be any surprises, but it was interesting to revisit things and see what sort of impact we've had. Upcoming, you see we have a speaker coming from the Community Service Society, Sam Stein, to talk about the legacy of the housing policy of the de Blasio administration. This is off of a report that he and CSS put out. Committees like Land Use and Strategic Community Planning might want to promote this and encourage members to attend, because I think it's interesting to all 3 of us. I haven't read the report, so I don't know exactly what he's going to say. And then we have a speaker pending to talk about the impact of the Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act, or TOPA, which we've already discussed in full board. But the act that will enable nonprofits and tenant groups to come together to purchase, to have first right of purchase on buildings that are put up for sale. In terms of support from other committees, we would like you to circulate information about the Sam Stein presentation, the CSS presentation. I don't think there's anything else in the short term. We are going to be working alongside other committees, strategic community planning on Perlman Place, and health on support for homeless people with specific health needs. And that's a segue into vision. One of the things we're starting to look at is the state of homeless services for vulnerable populations, like people with developmental disabilities and mental health issues. There are some known gaps in how the needs of those people are covered that we'd like to learn more about and see if we can intervene and help. A couple of other issues that we are focusing on in the upcoming months are the state of NYCHA and the future of these public-private pact conversions, which is something we discussed about a year ago that is circling back around. Corinne is actually at a meeting to talk about that tonight. That's why I'm here. And the other ongoing issue for us is supportive housing and alternative models for housing construction and finance. That's all I got.
Awesome. Thank you, Rich. Ambitious agendas. I love it.
And I'd like to echo Rich's appeal that other committees spread the word either through their chairs reports, and we'll certainly in the office do this through our social media and our other communications documents like the newsletter. Because apart from the fact that when a speaker comes, that it might be actually interesting to other members who are not on the committee, when folks come, we do have to be cognizant that these folks are giving of their free time to come and speak to us. And we really want to show them the interest and the respect that they deserve by having a good showing at all of these meetings. That when we actually say, hey, you know, CB6 is worth your time to come and speak to us, that we really want them to see that there are people there that are interested. That's all.
All right. Thank you, Jesus. Any questions or comments for Rich? All right. Thank you so much. So again, March 17th is our next executive committee meeting. Let's move on to public safety. Matt?
All right. So obviously we did not have a previous meeting, so tomorrow is our first meeting. We will hear from the police precincts first, and then we will, if we have time, we'll start the conversation on police reform, which is going to be probably a 2 to 3 month conversation. So as we get into March, depending on what comes out of the committee tomorrow night, we will continue that discussion. I'm working on a couple of presentations from some different organizations. Keep you posted on that. And then we also have presentation by emergency management on how to pack a go bag in the event of an emergency. Obviously, if you look at what's happening in Texas right now, things do tend to crop up pretty quickly. So, you know, keep the community informed on that. And then we'll look at surveillance technologies. If time permits, that may get bumped to number 3 if we have another presentation. So that's about all I have. Any questions?
I actually have a question. So we have not reached out to emergency management yet, but we will very soon to see if they're available. The Go Bag presentation can run anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour, including Q&A. So it may be a little ambitious to have 2 things on the agenda that night. I guess what we can do is we can leave this agenda tentative, and once we hear back definitively from emergency management, we can then reach out to you. If knowing that it could go long, this Go Bag presentation, would you like to have 2 things on the agenda that night, or if they say yes, move the surveillance item to the next month?
I mean, that's a good question. I would say I would offer them. I mean, we could technically the emergency management thing, I mean, they should be available, other months, right? So it's not necessarily
Right.
urgent. So I would consider offering, since you haven't reached out to them yet, I would consider offering them April.
Okay.
Since, I mean, I can definitely see, I didn't want to overload tomorrow's agenda because I really want to see where the committee wants to go with police reform, and seeing that the state set a deadline of April 1st. I want to keep the conversations focused on that, probably through March and maybe into April, depending on what comes out of that. And then I guess we can revisit. We can probably have emergency management for April then.
Okay, so we'll do emergency management for April, and as far as the surveillance, we leave that for March.
Yeah, I mean that can be included in the conversation on police reform, even though it's referring to legislation that's been passed by the city council, but not necessarily acted on yet. So it's more, it could just be, I don't know, that I have to look at that a little bit more with Youssef and see if there's anything actionable item for the committee at this point. I mean, the legislation's already been passed. It's just, it hasn't been implemented yet.
All right, why don't we connect after you've had your first meeting properly, and then we'll see what needs to be updated here.
Fair enough. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Right, I see Sandro has a hand up as well.
Yeah, I just had a quick request. I'm familiar with Post-Act, but I think it could be a little clearer because I think most people won't understand the reference. And as you point out, this is like an ongoing topic of significant interest for the board and to the community as a whole. So I would just maybe rephrase the item title. That's it.
Yeah, that's a good point, Sandro. That's actually what I was talking about in the during the chair's report about how we want to present information to the public. So something like that we might be familiar with, but people from the general public might not have any idea what that is. So
once Matt has his first committee properly, and we get more clarity on whether this will be on in what form, then we'll workshop that language.
Perfect.
Sounds good.
Thanks, Sandro. Are there any other questions or comments for Matt? All right, seeing none, let's move on to land use. Adam?
Good evening, all. So our last meeting back in January, there were no resos, but we heard from the ESCR team. We heard from a community group trying to advocate for crew boats, not quite kayaks, not quite, punting on the Thames, but somewhere in between, and just general updates. For our upcoming meeting, which will be next Monday, we have 4 items on the agenda. One is Kavitha had explained earlier, or had talked about earlier, is a preliminary discussion of the comprehensive plan that's proposed by Speaker Johnson's office. Second item would be about helicopters. There were 3 bills discussed today in a hearing at City Council, so we want to sort of collect our thoughts on what we've said about previous helicopter items, potentially repackage them and weigh in on these upcoming these 3 items if need be. We got a word that the ESCR team needs to get a resolution from us regarding the signage that they presented to us last month. So we're hoping that'd be pretty brief. And finally, we want to begin a sort of a long-term discussion about what we would like to see along the waterfront north of Stuyvesant Cove. So pretty much the theme of this meeting is supposed to be about larger sort of discussions in terms of what we'd like to see within the comprehensive plan, helicopters and Stuyvesant Cove. So we hoping that will go well. And then to segue into what's before you, so we sort of have at least 2.5 ULURPs looking at us, from now until June. The one that's listed here, the Grand Hyatt. Sandy's been coordinating with CB5. Our intention is to have CB5 to have their presentation first, potentially having Sandy or in addition to somebody else kind of being a designated guest, if you will, who has the ability to chime in with questions, pretty early in their presentation. And we're going to encourage community members to sort of watch and to get a good feel. And then we'd hope that they would come to our our committee, provide a presentation and sort of the questions that we'd be able to have, they would be able to develop in that meeting and sort of ask and follow up on anything if need be. and then co-author a resolution with CB5. And so this sort of larger segues into sort of what Kavitha was talking about in her report, and this is the comprehensive plan. So Kavitha and I have been talking, and so I think one of the broader ideas is that we're hoping to actually eventually have a public forum, potentially a panel. So we've received sort of input from the Speaker's office. We've received input from a group that's in opposition. You know, I think there's been some other sorts of stuff that's sort of flown around. You know, this is a topic that comes up a lot. You know, I've joked in email this afternoon that, you know, I think we've been debating this since the 1930s, you know, and we could debate it for a long time, but there are a lot of unique voices that that should be heard. And I think it'd be interesting to sort of pick their brains in a public forum. So ultimately, what I think we'd like to do is to sort of work towards creating a forum, gathering those unique voices, and having one potentially, you know, later in the spring, probably March or April, hopefully closer to the time when this legislation has a hearing. As of right now, there's no real hearing scheduled. And so that's it. Kavitha, is there anything that you wanted to weigh in or add?
Yeah, hang on. I think am I mistaken in that I thought there was a hearing coming up right after your meeting on the February 24th? I had some other.
I think you're right, Kavitha.
Is there?
There's a hearing coming right away next week. So I don't know how much we're going to be able to do before that. But then in terms of what happens to the bill, I have no idea what's going to happen at that point, you know, so.
Okay.
I guess we that's why I'm hesitant to even throw it on my agenda till I know. But yeah, I don't know if anyone in the office knows more about that.
So I invited George James to be in attendance for your Monday meeting, Adam, and he did mention that there was a hearing. I asked Cody to find out a little bit more information. Let me double check with him tomorrow. What he was able to find. But I believe Kavitha's right that there is a hearing the next day, right after your Monday land use meeting. So it'll be the sort of thing that members can go attend, maybe even speak on their own behalf. But yeah, I believe there is a hearing coming up.
All right, interesting. I thought we had a little bit more time.
All the more reason for the members to read all the material we sent them the other day.
Right. And so after this meeting, I will be forwarding those materials and the video presentation that the Speaker's office gave to CB5 and 11. And so we'll discuss it more. So maybe less in a scholarly sense and more in a time-sensitive sense. Okay.
Awesome.
Okay.
Are there, Kavitha, is that your hand still up or? Okay. All right, are there any other questions for Adam and land use? All right, seeing none, we'll go to the last one because we already heard from John, which is business affairs and licensing. Claire?
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? Good to see you. We have our February meeting next week. So just to recap of January, we saw 3 new applications. We passed them all. We talked about that at the full board. SEMA brought up a new platform and we got that posted to our page on the website. So you could check that out if you want to order through an app. So in February, we have a few more applications coming to talk to us. There are 4 businesses. And then different than typical meetings, we're going to have a representative from the Urban Justice Center, the street vendor project, to discuss the recent passage of Intro 1116, which expands the availability of food vendor permits, in addition to creating an Office of Street Vendor Enforcement and establishing
a street vendor advisory board. So I'm going to crowdsource, or I have been, some questions that our committee has come up with for this representative. But if anyone has any questions, please send them to me, or you can share them now. And March seems far away, but we'll have more people coming forward for renewals, undoubtedly.
Awesome, thank you, Claire. Are there any questions or comments for Claire?
I have something to say, Kyle. I don't know if you can see me.
Yeah, I can see you now. Go ahead.
But I think it's also important that if we're going to hear, I'm sorry, I'm choking. If we're going to hear from the street vendor project, that we also hear from the East Midtown business improvement districts, because they also have, and it doesn't have to be at the same time, but I just think that to get the their perspective would also be helpful.
That sounds good. Yeah, I agree. I don't know if we could coordinate that for this month, but moving forward, I think hopefully we'll have like some sort of an action item after the street vendor project, and we can continue to add on to this work. So thanks for the suggestion.
Thanks, Matt. All right, I'm not seeing any other questions or comments. So let's move on to old or new business. If any committee member has any old or new business, please raise your hand. Kevin, go ahead.
And hopefully this fits into this category. Minutes. We're recording the meetings. Those recordings, I guess, are certainly public statements of what happened. Is there a reason why, is it mandated that we actually have to do minutes for meetings when there's a recording?
So you're talking about, do the video recording suffice as minutes instead of having minutes?
Thank you, yes.
Okay. Jesus, do you want to answer that?
The state open meetings law requires that we post minutes, that we take minutes and post them. That's why we do it.
Mm-hmm.
And because the governor's executive order that allows, that suspends a portion of the open meetings law, which allows us to then have meetings like this on Zoom, that is why we do the recordings, that is why we do the live streaming, and that is why we make them available. Unfortunately, that directive did not allow us to use recordings in lieu of minutes.
Okay.
But that's something that, again, can go to budget and governmental affairs as they discuss public, the public meetings law, that, again, they can adjust for how we are doing things now. So that could be something through public discussion to say, hey, if we have, if there's a mandate actually to record all meetings. I'm not even sure if everyone is recording and posting all their meetings throughout the city. But if they are, that if that could suffice instead of having people write it down instead.
Yeah, and as you know, just in the spirit of what, I appreciate in streamlining the full board meetings, especially, but even on the committee end, clearly there's software that can transcribe, and in many cases, they're more accurate than us taking notes. So, that would potentially be taking of the minutes, right? If you were to.
Yeah. I mean, we can discuss that as well. And definitely I'll put a plug in, Jesus, for the survey again, to include that in your surveys as well, about what works for virtual meetings. But yeah, definitely accessibility is part of this as well. Matt, I see your hand up.
Thank you, Kyle. I can speak again. Thank God. I was there. I don't know what happened. So thank you for bearing with me. But coming from a guy whose hands are literally burning from trying to type these minutes right now, verbatim from everybody speaking, I would completely welcome any suggestion for a software that would transcribe these minutes. And I think it's a great idea. So thank you very much, Kevin.
So the state open meetings law actually makes a distinction between transcription, which they do require, and minutes. So minutes are not a transcription; they're different. And we've had, and the New York Metropolitan Parliamentarian Society, backs us up with that. They are different things. But I will say, given the offices, had experience taking minutes before, Matt, it might actually be useful to use the video, watch it later, just listen for the main points now, and then fill in all the details later with the video if possible. It's a lot easier than sort of trying to catch everything on the spot. What I do is I make a sort of digest of what I've learned today, and I will watch the video again and then fill in Cody and Brendan, because it's important that they be aware of what happens at exec. So it takes a little bit of extra time in that we have to watch the video again, but I think it saves a lot more effort and stress in trying to capture everything live.
Well, it's funny you should say that, because I've done that for the last 2 sets of minutes, where I've gone back and I've taken some rudimentary, some just whatever kind of notes that I would take at the meeting, during the meeting, but then I'd go back and watch the video. But it takes an incredible amount of time to pause the video, type something, keep going, and so this time I thought I might try something different, where I would actually try to type as much of it as I could during the meeting itself, so that going back to the tape, I can go and capture whatever I might have missed. But it's going to the video and then trying to type it from the video takes an incredible amount of time. But I guess I could be more succinct in the type of things that I capture, and perhaps bullet point it and whatnot. So maybe that's what I'll try to do this time. And then I'll try to get them to you sooner, so that you can take a look at them and see whether I'm capturing what I need to, in the bullet point process. And maybe I'll I'll do it that way, but we'll see.
Yeah, it does take a little practice, but I think with the minutes especially, it's an exercise in sort of picking out what really is important, what really matters, what we might really need to remember for future months, and leaving the extraneous stuff out.
Yeah, and that's something that we can discuss as well. I'm also discussing, the orientation for new members, and also that leadership pipeline for the rest of the board as well, and chair support. So that's something that I want to have focus on as well, how to write proper minutes, just so that we're uniform in that. And because I think sometimes people get very overwhelmed with what that looks like and what that is and what people should and shouldn't be including. So that's definitely something that's coming down the line as well, in terms of resources for chairs and for members. Because I know sometimes it's hard, that's one of the reasons we put in the doodle poll to get people to sign up for minutes, because a lot of people don't want to do it because they have an idea of what it is and don't necessarily know what it exactly is. So that's definitely something we're working on as well. But I also see in the chat that there are some options that Rashma and Kavitha, I believe, included on transcription services for Zoom. So if anyone wants to take a look at that. Rashma, you have a question?
Yeah, or I just wanted to comment, what I was taking notes, I was transcribing, like I was saying everybody, what they said and the questions. And so it always took me a long time to do the notes until I became, right now with being the acting chair of the budget committee, I've had to review notes from other people. And I realized what other people do is just summarize it. And so now the next time I take notes is going to be a very different approach, which I didn't know. So that's something that I think you should share in training. Because and that's why I know this transcription option for Zoom, because I was going back to the recordings. I took it quite a few times last year, and I would go to the recording and transcribe it based on the recording.
No, that's a good perspective. I mean, an experience, but yeah, for some people, it's not just about transcription. It's about just, as Jesus mentioned, getting to the point. So if that's something that you're seeing as chairs with your committees, people who are struggling with putting together minutes, or if you feel overwhelmed by it, definitely do mention that to me, because that's something that I'd like to incorporate in terms of training and support for board members as well. And I know that the Borough President's Office, they do these trainings as well. I don't know if anyone has attended them during COVID, but they do the virtual trainings. They used to happen in person before, where you'd go down to the to the borough president's office uptown or downtown and actually sit through these courses on, parliamentary procedure and how to write resolutions and things like that. But I also think there's some value in doing it locally and making sure that we can apply that knowledge to specific things that we're doing in meetings. So whether it's minutes or even other things that you see committee members struggling with as chairs in your position, do bring that up, because that's something that we can do on our end and in my position as chair to put something together to make sure everyone is supported. But yeah, no, that's a good point to bring up, Kevin. And hopefully these conversations continue with Rashma and with Rick at the budget and governmental affairs as well, because that'll definitely be part of the conversation.
Yeah. And I actually attended all those parliamentarian meetings too, and I still didn't realize that about the minutes. Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, because those are more general trainings, right? And they have to cover all of the Manhattan community boards. And some people do it differently. If you've ever attended other committee meetings or even just looked at their rosters, their committees are all different. Their processes are different. There are some for us, like we have one committee, and other full boards have like 5 different committees to focus on the topics that one committee here follows through. And they have like 2-3 members each. So sometimes it's not completely useful in that way, but yeah, we'll definitely continue that with your committee. Is there any other old or new business? All right. Seeing no further business, I'm going to adjourn the meeting at 8:05 p.m. Thank you, everybody. Hope you had a great night. Sorry for going a little late today. But again, put that in your survey about what works and doesn't work with virtual meetings. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Good night.
Thanks.